And let's start with Bengals-Browns.
Oh.
Right here. It's like it's a little tense in the booth today with a Browns fan and a Bengals fan.
Happy Tyler.
Happy Tyler.
Tyler, our producer, and Tyler, the guy that thinks he's Tyler when we say Tyler, who's also a Browns fan. That email we got in.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And potential winner of the Madden codes. By the way, if you're in here right now, Tyler thinks he's going to win one of the 5 Madden codes in our Discord. So you go to the YouTube link, you get to join our Discord, and today, Monday, September 11th here, we are going to give away 5 Madden codes in our Discord.
Wow.
How about that?
Cool. Yeah, there's a channel to drop your platform and your whatever gaming handle, gaming tag, whatever they call that thing. The Discord, we're going to try and start integrating that into the show a little bit more. Maybe have a question of the week from the Discord, try and get the picks from people in the Discord. We'll bring those up during the preview show as well. So there's a lot happening in there, a lot of ideas floating around. We'll try and make that as good and interactive a spot as possible going forward. So get in there.
All right, Browns 24, Bengals 3. Just an absolute beatdown. It was just a low-scoring game overall. Mm-hmm. There's also rain. All right?
You know what that means?
Quick PSA. It's not throw it out. Just understand context. When you're like, oh, no, the sky's falling. This offense is terrible. Nobody can move the ball. Like, you just watched the game in the rain where guys couldn't catch the ball.
Yep.
And little hand Joe Burrow couldn't throw the ball. All right? He only has 9-inch hands. We completely missed that in our analysis.
Can't believe
the ball completely slipped out on one pass by Burrow. We forgot about the 9-inch hands in the rain.
Wow.
But, for your fantasy analysis, all of our smart EPA people, the EPA was bad. Can you adjust EPA for the rain? Can you just please add some context here before you start trashing offenses?
Yeah.
All right.
You know how you do that? Throw it out.
Just throw it out.
Get rid of it. Doesn't mean anything.
All right. Well, we're not going to throw this game out because a lot of interesting things happened, especially from that Browns defensive line and with the Browns running game. But Cleveland wins 24-3. Bengals offense is inept, but also the Browns defense, man. That defensive line, night and day this year compared to last year. They're moving guys around. I'll talk about that in a second, but what are your initial thoughts here on this Browns 24-3 opening day win?
Yeah, I mean, obviously impressive by the Browns. Certainly that defense, like their defense looks different under Jim Schwartz. And look, it's not like they just brought in a new coach and everything's changed. Like they have different players in there as well. Like Zadarius Smith provided the complement to Myles Garrett that was never there last year, or at least barely there. The occasional Jadeveon Clowney flash of substance. But Myles Garrett had 6 pressures. Zadarius Smith had 6 pressures. That's the kind of complement that they absolutely needed. Dalvin Tomlinson had a couple. Like they had extra players chipping in with that presence and impact up front. And that's huge because now you've got consistent pressure coming, which means the secondary, which is stuffed full of good players, and it didn't look like it last year, those guys can actually show up and perform and play at a higher level because the ball's got to come out quicker because they don't have to cover for as long. That Browns defense could absolutely be legit this year and maybe the unit that we thought they were going to be a year ago.
Yeah, it's not just the names that you mentioned, Sam. They were moving Myles Garrett around. We saw that early in the game. And it was only 4 snaps, but there were 4 snaps where Myles Garrett was playing inside linebacker. He had not done that at all. His previous 6 years in his career, he'd only done it 21 times. So it's a very small sample, but this was the Browns have the ability because of Zadarius Smith and Obo and some of the moves they've made this offseason, they have the ability to actually move Myles Garrett around, create mismatches. On the 4 snaps where Garrett lined up as an inside linebacker, there was a sack and 3 incompletions. I mean, just that ability up front by the Browns to create havoc. And then Myles Garrett on top of that, we mentioned on the preview show, his matchup with Orlando Brown Jr. Look, I'm not low on Orlando Brown Jr. I think he's got a track record of being pretty good no matter what Chiefs fans tell you. He is a good left tackle. He is a fine pass protector. He is always overmatched against Myles Garrett. And Garrett was, taking a 360-pound man and throwing him into Joe Burrow's lap. That's going to happen again later this year when they play each other. But other than that, Orlando Brown's not bad. He's fine, but he struggles in his Myles Garrett matchup. So the Browns won this thing up front. In addition to, Joe Burrow looked rusty. The Bengals offense looked out of sync. The Browns defense deserves credit. I think there's a lot of things at play here. But to me, the biggest story of this game is the Browns and their defensive front. Rain game or not, looking night and day different from last season.
No, absolutely. I mean, even if you just look through, so Kadarius Toney, with one of the worst receiver games of all time, scored more fantasy points than T. Higgins, who had 7 targets come his way and didn't catch a single one of them. And when you go through those 7 targets, it's not like T. Higgins was out here dropping everything that came his way. He was either blanket covered or the ball was being forced out early and in not necessarily, advantageous directions by that Browns pressure up front. Like, that's exactly what we're talking about. The combination of that pressure or just the good players on the back end meant that connection had nowhere to work. Like, Burrow got some passes away to T. Higgins, but could not connect, to Jamar Chase, but could not connect with T. Higgins at all during the course of the game. And it wasn't because T. Higgins just suddenly became a bad player.
Browns were physical. They were making every throw difficult. And then I think from a Burrow perspective, he was clearly off yesterday. And there was a couple plays where there was just awful miscommunications. Mm-hmm. There was at least 3 miscommunications in there. There's other plays that looked like he's just working the wrong side of the field. And again, we missed some of this. He hasn't practiced, right? Burrow hasn't practiced. And the same way Deshaun Watson looked a little rusty last year, maybe not right off the bat, but just generally in the stretch run, Burrow was off. He wasn't seeing the field well. When things were uncovered, Burrow wasn't seeing it. And then when he was making the right read, Browns were covering it up pretty well, and there's nowhere to go. So I think Cleveland deserves credit, and I also think the Bengals and Burrow in that pass game, they were just off too. And then it was rainy, and it was tough to throw the ball. When he did have open throws, he's missing them as well because he wasn't throwing the ball effectively in the weather.
I think it was Twitter, but somebody asked, have we noticed an increase in rust, essentially, crappy week 1 play from offensive players since teams started this approach of let's not risk the starters during preseason ever? Do players actually need some period to knock the rust off before the regular season starts? Because there does seem to be some of these games where it just doesn't look like those players.
I don't remember week 1 off the top of my head last year that it was that bad for offenses. But there was definitely a point by when you're watching Scott Hansen in Red Zone, and I think you're at halftime in most of the games, he's like, there's been 12 touchdowns today.
Right.
3 of them were by rookies at that point. There was 12 touchdowns today. I think it just happens, right? This happened, we hit week 7. It's it was kind of a defensive game, not a lot of points scored in the 1 o'clock games, right? You have that feel sometimes. It shows up.
I also wonder if there's because you see a lot of times teams go, well, okay, they need some kind of tune-up, before the season. So let's just give them a drive. It's we'll run the whole simulation of getting ready for game day, and then we'll give them a game, and then they go out there and they execute one drive and they sit down. I wonder if they do need an extended period. Even if you play them 1 game in preseason, but in that 1 game, give them a half, give them a substantial amount of playing time to get through all of that crap and then get out the other side. And okay, you risk them, but it apparently actually makes a difference so you don't have games like this.
Look, it's
not that was an option for Cincinnati, by the way, with Burrow's injury. It's not like, they voluntarily kept him on the sideline during preseason. The guy had a calf injury.
No, I mean, it's a fair question. I don't know if that's really the case. The other thing is here, do we throw overreaction in the title? We're supposed to overreact to things. I think there are certain things where the overreaction is warranted today. Okay. In week 1. There are other things where it is not warranted, and we'll make sure that we identify those things.
Yeah, so on my notes, I highlighted games that I think will be massively overreacted to this week. This is one of them.
This one will absolutely be overreacted to, and I'm not going to do it. This is not a game I'm going to overreact to from the Bengals' perspective. I will not overreact, but I do believe this is a good Browns team based off of this game. I believe that this game showed that the offseason moves that the Browns made, defensive personnel, defensive coordinator, the way they ran offensively, their zone scheme looked fantastic. Nick Chubb was great. DeJuan Jones comes in. He's still good in pass protection. The rookie right tackle coming in for Jack Conklin.
Who might be the starter now.
Yeah, so I think from a Browns perspective, it's real. From a Bengals perspective, I want to reiterate, through the last 3 years of Zach Taylor as head coach, they've had these games. This is not new for the Bengals. They have had duds for games and always bounce back. The duds often happen against the Browns. They
He's
happen
0-4.
against the Jets.
Joe Burrow is 0-4 against the Browns in his career.
Yeah.
He's like a play or two away from being 4-0 against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and he's 0-4 against the Browns.
Yeah, and look, last year the Bengals started 0-2. Burrow they lost to the Steelers week 1. They lost to the Cowboys. They couldn't block up front and the whole thing. And the Bengals bounced back. I'm not saying it's happening next week against the Ravens, but the Bengals are going to bounce back and they're going to be fine. So I'm not overreacting from a Cincinnati perspective, and I'll react appropriately for the Browns and give them credit and say they are a team that people need to be looking at.